Hello again. It's me, Sean Fennessey, host of the Big Picture Podcast, and I'm here to help you learn more about movies. Today we're building a syllabus. Much like our last syllabus about the film Nosferatu, we are building a syllabus to a highly anticipated movie called The Brutalist. This film is hotly tabbed as a potential Best Picture contender, and it is steeped in world history, art history, and film history. So come with me on this journey because I have amassed a great many films to tell you about in an effort to prepare to watch Brady Corbet's The Brutalist. Let's begin. Now, we always build our syllabus on Letterboxd. I'd like to thank you for making a Letterboxd account in this new year, 2025. Our Lord and Savior, Jesus Letterboxd, is thriving here. So let's just check out how we build a list here. We're going to go to lists. I remember last time I built one of these beautiful syllabi, people were looking at all my other lists, my private list, my personal list, and they were saying, oh my gosh, what are we going to hear on the show in the future because of these lists? Don't worry about what's happening on my list, all right? Stop being such a snoop. I'm doing this for you. Show a little bit of respect for this process. All right, here is The Brutalist. Where should we begin on this list? Well, first of all, we need to make it private. Second of all, I think we should start in the 1920s. Why not? We started in the 1920s with Nosferatu. We're going to start in the 1920s with The Brutalist. And I thought of a film, King Vidor's The Crowd from 1928. This is a silent film, one of the signature silents. King Vidor, one of the signature Hollywood filmmakers who managed to bridge the gap between the silence and talkies. And his name may come up again as we talk through this syllabus here. The Crowd, one of his masterpieces, a sweeping and sad story about the way that America crushes the common man. If you've seen The Brutalist, you know that this is a theme that recurs. It'll recur throughout the list of movies that I'm going through here. Fascinating movie. One thing that is very interesting about it is that it had 7 different endings that were shot by Vidor and the production crew, and 2 of those endings were offered to exhibitors for the public to see. In particular, a happy ending and a sad ending. This is a very sad movie, and interestingly, the sad ending was more popular among the crowd and has canonically become the ending of the film in the world of cinema. I think this movie is now in the public domain as well, so you can watch it fairly easily. I think it might be on Tubi, it might be on YouTube. You can find it in a lot of places. So let's add The Crowd to our syllabus as a starting point. There it is, 1928. Save. Okay, that's our first film. Let's take a look at our list, why don't we? There it is. You know what I like to do here? I love to change the poster. So let's just change the poster on our first film as a starting point. What I want to see is the filmmaker's name, the actors' names. There's James Murray, Eleanor Boardman. We're going to add, and we'll use that poster. Okay, next film. It's actually 2 films. Hard to talk about massive, ambitious American storytelling without talking about Orson Welles. There are 2 Orson Welles movies that I think really resonate with themes and ideas in The Brutalist. Those movies are, of course, Citizen Kane, Orson Welles' first film, his best film, one of the most important films in movie history. We've talked about it many times on The Big Picture, especially during the Mank years. Of course, it's a movie about a titan of industry, a man with big, bold ideas about how this country should work, some corrupt ideas. In the film, Charles Foster Kane is stand-in for William Randolph Hearst. In The Brutalist, Guy Pearce plays a man named Harrison Van Buren, who is also a kind of titan of industry. You can see some echoes of Kane in that Harrison character. That's one. The other one, got right here. It's The Stranger. The Stranger is a lesser known work from Orson Welles, but very interesting and notable for this project. The Stranger is a movie about a Nazi war criminal who has immigrated to America and is in hiding in Connecticut. Now, of course, in The Brutalist, there are no Nazi war criminals, but it is a story of Holocaust survival and a story of immigration. And I felt like the twinning of The Stranger and Citizen Kane makes for an interesting presentation for what we're getting in The Brutalist. We'll come back to some stories and ideas like this in the future. So we've got 2 movies to look through. So let's look for Citizen Kane to start. There it is. What have I given this film on Letterboxd? Oh, 5 stars. I've seen it 3 times since I joined Letterboxd in 2020. Let's add it to our list. Here we go. Public list. Nope, not best of 2024. Private list. The Brutalist. We'll add that sucker. Okay, here's something we can do. We can go to Orson Welles' name and look at his films. It's listed by popularity. Where is The Stranger? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The 7th most popular film directed by Orson Welles is The Stranger. We'll go to that. What have I given it? 3.5 stars. And I liked it. I've also seen it twice since 2020. Notable. Let's add it to the Brutalist. What's next? Another King Vidor film. You might be thinking to yourself, this is getting kind of boring. 2 Orson Welles movies, 2 King Vidor movies. We're not even into the 1950s. I'm sorry. You're watching a guy on YouTube make a syllabus for a movie about an architect. What do you want me to... I don't know what else to do about this. Nevertheless, the movie we're going to talk about is The Fountainhead. The Fountainhead is the Ayn Rand novel, controversial novel about the individualist versus the collectivist mentality. Ayn Rand, not exactly the most popular person in some corners of YouTube, very popular in others. The film represents an interesting division point between King Vidor's career. The first half of his career is very much a series of portraits of people in collective action failing and being crushed by the system. The second half of his career is a lot of stories about individuals fighting on their own terms to conquer the American West. The Fountainhead, interestingly, is a novel and a movie, in the case of the movie played by Gary Cooper, about an architect. Just like our boy Laszlo Toth in The Brutalist. And now, I don't think The Fountainhead's a very good movie, to be totally honest with you. I think it's, one, it's got some dicey material that I don't love in the first place. Secondly, it feels very turgid and staid to me. Nevertheless, situating us in mid-century America around the idea of an architect with progressive ideas about that work feels relevant to what we're doing here. So I'm just going to add it to the mix. This is the last time I'll talk to you guys about Ayn Rand as we build this, I promise you. Okay, what's next? Let's go to the 1950s. Another twin billing. Another pairing. This won't be the last pairing. I have a lot of pairings here. This is a pairing of 2 films from George Stevens in the 1950s. In fact, 2 of the very best American movies made in the 1950s. I'm referring to A Place in the Sun from 1951 and Giant from 1956. 2 movies about American families, deception, dissolution, the difficulty of making it and surviving in America. In the case of A Place in the Sun, which stars Montgomery Clift as a man trying to worm his way into and out of a relationship and aspiring for something beyond what he has in front of him. And in Giant, a more epic story, one of the biggest and most beautiful Hollywood productions of its era, James Dean, Rock Hudson movie, that is a fascinating portrait of wealth and desire and capitalist expansion, in this case through the eyes of oil. Both of these movies star Elizabeth Taylor. Notably, they have that in common in addition to being directed by Stevens. So let's just add both of these movies because I really feel like when you're hearing all of the comparisons to what kind of movies that Brady Corbet had in mind, I don't know if he was thinking of George Stevens. I hope he was. In fact, we heard a lot about Giant when Killers of the Flower Moon was coming out, because that's a movie that Martin Scorsese cited. But these are 2 of the best American movies. They're 2 of the best American kind of epics. I think A Place in the Sun is more along the lines of a micro-epic that I talked about in the first episode we did about The Brutalist. But it fits right there. Let's talk about Alfred Hitchcock and another pairing. Hitchcock came up in our last syllabus. We talked about The Lodger. Let's go to the 1950s. 2 consecutive all-time classics shot in the VistaVision format, which is the film format that The Brutalist is shot in. We'll talk about it a little bit more as we go through our syllabus here, but Vertigo and North by Northwest, 2 of the most grand scale movies that Hitchcock made. One of the things that format does is it doesn't just beautifully portray a vision for a filmmaker, but it packs a lot of information into the screen. So when you think of Vertigo and you think of Jimmy Stewart's character looking out onto the Golden Gate Bridge or looking down that bell tower, or if you think about Cary Grant hanging from Mount Rushmore, there's a density of imagery that comes with a wider format like that. So when you hear dorks like me talking to you about how important it is to see a movie in 70 millimeter and why this new format matters, what it really means is you're just getting more movie. You're getting more visual information. You're getting more visual experience. You're getting more opportunities to become overwhelmed by what the director and the filmmakers are trying to convey to you. Again, I recognize that this is goofy and that some people are happy to watch movies on their phone. But for somebody like me to be able to see a Hitchcock movie shot in a format like this on a big screen is electrifying. So let's add these 2 movies. The first, of course, is Vertigo. We've all seen Vertigo, right? Have you seen Vertigo? It's probably important that you watch it at some point. If you don't watch it, I don't know why you're watching this video. But you know what? it takes all kinds to spend time on YouTube. If you're just letting this video play and you're, vacuuming or doing the dishes and you've got YouTube on your television, I want to say thanks. I appreciate it. You may not be hearing it because you've got the vacuum on, but I appreciate your patronage here. Okay, let's go to our next films. Another movie that I would describe as a kind of micro epic that felt on my mind when I was watching The Brutalist is Luchino Visconti's Rocco and His Brothers, which in Visconti's career, he made a lot of costume dramas, a lot of stately pieces like The Leopard or like Ludwig. But Rocco and His Brothers is a long but intimate domestic drama about a mother of sons who moves to the big city of Milan and attempts to make it in the city. And the two brothers fall in love with the same woman and they come to a kind of emotional warfare. Rocco and His Brothers is a beautiful movie. It's a tight character study, much like The Brutalist, but it is very long and it is very expansive and it's very emotionally demanding. And so I feel like it would be a useful thing to check out before checking out The Brutalist. Let's keep going. I thought I would mention very briefly One-Eyed Jacks, which is Marlon Brando's, I believe, his directorial debut, and maybe the only film he directed. I believe it's the only film that he directed. One-Eyed Jacks is a Western that is also shot in the VistaVision format that we talked about. And One-Eyed Jacks is the last American production to be used in that format. So that could be a cool one to check out. It's a darn good Western and a really good movie, even though it was significantly difficult production. How about The Eclipse, aka L'Eclisse from 1962? This is Michelangelo Antonioni's the second in his existentialist trilogy, probably the most complex and strange. The Brutalist features an epilogue. I'm not spoiling anything by telling you that it features that is mesmerizing and interesting and fascinating to unpack. L'Eclisse also features an extended, strange final 6 or 7 minutes that is worth the price of admission. This is a beautiful movie. It is quite slow, as all of Antonioni's films are, so they necessitate a level of attention that is uncommon in our movie-going experience. Put your phone in the other room before checking out The Eclipse. Let's add it to our mix here. My Italian spelling is not very strong. I apologize for the slowdown there. How about The Servant from 1963? Have you heard of The Servant, Joseph Losey's film? Screenplay by Harold Pinter based on a novel. It's about a wealthy guy who hires a manservant, and slowly over time, the manservant begins to overtake the man of the house by slowly manipulating him and encouraging him to do things that are not terribly healthy. I've got the manservant over here somewhere in my stack. Should I find it? Look at all these movies from my stack that I can share with you. There's One-Eyed Jacks for you. There's L'Eclisse. There's The Servant. The Servant is a fascinating movie about power and who has it and when they have it and why they have it. In The Brutalist, we have a story of an artist and a patron and the way the power oscillates in that relationship. There's also power in a marriage. There's power in friendship. There's power in professional collaboration. The Servant is a much smaller movie, even more paranoid movie than The Brutalist, but it's a great movie and has been recently rediscovered, and it being issued on the Criterion Collection, I think, signals that it is now part of a canon, but it's damn good. Next movie on the list for me is The Pawnbroker. Pawnbroker came up in our Sidney Lumet episode last year. It's one of his best films. It's also a film about a Holocaust survivor who moves to the United States after witnessing the death of his family and is deeply traumatized by what he has experienced in his life and turns inward and closes himself off to the world, even closes himself off to people who want to be with him, take care of him, love him. He rejects everything. Laszlo Toth in The Brutalist, similarly, someone who is attempting to shield himself from future pain because of previous trauma that he has experienced. Pawnbroker is an amazing film. You should check it out. Belongs on our list. Okay, what's next? Here's a discovery for me. The character of Laszlo Toth is Hungarian. And there's a great history of Hungarian cinema, from Béla Tarr to István Szabó to the director who I'm going to give a shout out to right now. This is Miklós Janszko. Miklós Janszko is considered by many to be the greatest Hungarian director of all time. His son, David Janszko, is the editor of the film The Brutalist. Adrian Brody is the son of a Hungarian woman who left the country to come to the United States in, I believe, the 1960s. The film that I want to talk about is called The Roundup, which I think is the best of the Jansko movies that I've seen. I have not seen all of them, but The Roundup might be the best thing I've seen in the last 6 months. Staggering movie about a group of prisoners from a failed rebellion decades later who are slowly being ferreted out to discover a potential leader amongst their crew. Gorgeous black and white cinematography. Jansko is just incredible at blocking. He's renowned for long takes, not the kind of athletic takes that Amanda is sometimes critical of on our show, but long, still, quiet takes across vast periods of time and land. This features a little of that, but it's very early on in his career before he's really mastered that style. But this movie is breathtaking. So people should check it out from 1966, The Roundup. Also thought we should add Andrei Rublev, which is one of Andrei Tarkovsky's best movies. It's a movie about an artist. It has a slightly different relationship to how an artist is portrayed, but Tarkovsky is obviously a filmmaker who's on the mind of Brady Corbet. In fact, when Brady and I talked, we talked about how he wants to do a science fiction film next. And he said the only 2 science fiction films you really need to consider are Solaris, which is directed by Tarkovsky, and the next film I'm going to add to our list, which is 2001: A Space Odyssey. Here's Andrei Rublev for you. And here's 2001: A Space Odyssey on beautiful 4K. What can I say about 2001? I don't have to say anything. You know all about it. Let's keep it moving. When I spoke to Adam Naiman on this show about The Brutalist, probably the first of multiple conversations, if I'm being honest, the movie that was rattling around in my head and that I brought up a few times was The Conformist, which is a Bernardo Bertolucci movie made in 1970 about a fascist functionary, a kind of middleman who is selected to assassinate one of his teachers, a former teacher of his who is a dissident figure in the country at the time. And it's a beautiful movie with extraordinary production design. And I think it just absolutely feels so in concert with a lot of what The Brutalist is doing. So let's add The Conformist. But first, we're going to need to add Andrei Rublev in 2001. So let's do that. I'm spinning a lot of plates here, guys. I'm touching Blu-rays. I'm looking at you and speaking to you. I'm handling Letterboxd. I'm looking at a sheet of paper. This isn't as easy as it looks, I promise you. Okay, we've added The Conformist. The movies that keep getting brought up related to the Brutalist, and they're related for sure, are the Godfather films and the epic works of Francis Ford Coppola. Of course, there are movies about family, there are movies about compromise, there are movies about capitalism, and sure, there are long, big American epics that are great, much like The Brutalist. Is The Brutalist as great as The Godfather? Who cares? What's the difference? That's not how things actually work. But the Godfather films are definitely a part of the conversation. So let's add The Godfather and The Godfather Part 2. What do you prefer, friends out there? Godfather 1, Godfather 2? I would say Godfather 2 feels more in sync with its story about immigration. There's obviously a lot of acknowledgement of the immigrant experience in The Brutalist that feels like an echo of a lot of what we see in Godfather Part 2 and Vito Corleone's journey to America and New York City and his evolution as a character. What's next for us? How about Days of Heaven? Days of Heaven is a film from 1978. Why don't we do 2 films from 1978? Days of Heaven, a great American masterpiece from Terrence Malick about capitalism, again, and the destruction of the natural world and the impossibility of love. These are all things that appear in The Brutalist. And then also The Deer Hunter from 1978, Michael Cimino's Academy Award-winning film that is a story with very similar ideas, a story about friendship and pain. And when I think about The Brutalist and the big gestures of the movie and the big obvious metaphorical storytelling that is going on in the movie, I like to point to these American stories. The Godfather is one of them. The Godfather, of course, memorably ends with Michael Corleone literally closing the door on his wife, closing the door on family, closing the door on the society that is outside of the criminal organization, closing the door outside of people who are not in his blood, closing the door on the past and moving into the future of his leadership as the family. It's a big honking metaphor, is it not? There's a lot of those in The Brutalist too. The Deer Hunter has those same things. The Deer Hunter has a story about survival and going back to the pain of your life and having to cope with it. And in The Deer Hunter, it's of course memorably recreated with Christopher Walken's character being stuck in Vietnam and being unable to escape this, circular pain that he is feeling and participating in the firing game at the end of the movie. So let's add Days of Heaven, starring Big Picture guest Richard Gere. Thank you, Richard Gere. And The Deer Hunter. If you haven't seen these movies, turn this video off and go watch them. We're starting to get a little bit more contemporary now, but we're still in the 70s. The last one I wanted to cite is Vengeance is Mine, which is a gangster movie of a kind of thriller, serial killer thriller as well, from Shohei Imamura, the Japanese filmmaker. It's the last live-action movie to be shot on VistaVision. It's a darn good movie. I highly recommend you watch it. I think I have it here. Let me see. Here it is. It was sitting right on top of Heaven's Gate from Michael Cimino, also relevant in this conversation, and The Deer Hunter. Okay, so we'll add Vengeance is Mine. There's a movie that I have not heard mentioned yet in relation to The Brutalist, but it banged around in my mind as I was watching the movie. And it feels obvious once you hear it, which is Malcolm X, Spike Lee's beloved biopic of the civil rights leader, and a movie that attempts to capture an extended period of time in the middle of the 20th century about a complicated, transgressive political figure and his relationship to external power in the world, and a movie that is a big swing. The Brutalist is a big swing. A lot of the movies I'm talking to you about right now are big swings. Malcolm X is one of the biggest and most successful swings, and frankly, it feels in concert with a lot of what's going on in the movie that we're talking about. Speaking of in concert, The Pianist. Of course, The Pianist is a Roman Polanski movie that got Adrian Brody his first Academy Award win for Best Actor back in 2002 at the age of, I believe, 29, making him the youngest actor to ever win Best Actor. And Brody's performance is staggering as a pianist who's forced to perform amidst the carnage of the Holocaust in World War II in Poland. And it's a very profound movie and a very sad movie, and obviously a movie that keeps coming up in discussion about this movie. Okay, let's stay in the 2000s. Two movies that feature Brady Corbet as an actor. He was an actor, for those who don't know, who are only catching up with him as a filmmaker. The first one is Mysterious Skin, directed by the great Greg Araki. This movie stars Joseph Gordon-Levitt. It's a movie about young male hustlers, prostitutes, and the Johns that they pick up. Very, very dark, sad movie. Corbet has a supporting performance. When I talked to him, I asked him about using his acting work as a way to learn how to be a better director because he always exhibited great taste. He also appeared in another film by a great filmmaker, the 2007 remake of Funny Games, the American version starring Naomi Watts and Tim Roth. Brady Corbet, along with Michael Pitt, was one of two men menacing a family to extraordinary ends in this remake. Hard movie to watch. Michael Haneke, definitely a part of the Brutalist formulation, though, if you see his movies and you see what's going on in this movie. Also a director who's pretty unsubtle, for being honest. Okay, let's do another director pairing. It's undeniable that The Master and There Will Be Blood, the two movies from Paul Thomas Anderson in 2007 and 2012, are a part of the dynamics of this movie. Whether Corbet is actually literally citing them, I don't know. But there are too many similarities. There's too much of a feeling of rot in the American spirit. In The Master, of course, you've got a movie about someone looking for a kind of supplicant, a kind of someone who can, help them and protect them. And in There Will Be Blood, you've got a forceful, singular individualist working to no end to get to the top of the heap. These are both big ideas in The Brutalist, so let's add those two movies. Of course, listeners of The Big Picture know that Paul Thomas Anderson is my spirit animal. Normal stuff. He's got a new movie coming out in 2025. Do you guys know? The Battle of Bacton Cross. I'm not putting it on this list, but just think about it. 2013, James Gray's The Immigrant, a movie dealing with some similar themes. Not the same. The time period is different, but the imagery that we see at the beginning of this movie, the kind of arrival to the Statue of Liberty at Ellis Island. There seems to be an echo there. And this is a fascinating movie that got a little bit caught in the slipstream of the Harvey Weinstein experience back in 2013. And James had to fight hard to get his vision of the movie into the world. But it's a great movie. It stars Joaquin Phoenix and Marion Cotillard if you have not seen it. Let's keep going. How about the other movies that Brady Corbet and his partner Mona Fastvold have made? They've actually directed 4 films. Fastvold has directed 2 films, The Sleepwalker and The World to Come from 2020, a movie that was released during the COVID pandemic that not a lot of people have seen. That is a good film. And then The Childhood of a Leader from 2015 and Vox Lux are Brady's 2 movies. I think they're important movies to watch to be prepared for this, both stylistically and in terms of what ideas those filmmakers are interested in. Vox Lux, a very divisive movie. I was not a huge fan of the movie at the time. Childhood of a Leader, I liked a little bit more. That movie stars Robert Pattinson and Bernice Bejo. Vox Lux notably stars Natalie Portman as a famous pop star who is the survivor of a school shooting. So let's just add those. We'll add The Childhood of a Leader. I was able to acquire physical media of these films. I don't believe they're being produced in the United States right now, but let's just show them off. Why not? The World to Come, that's Mona's film. There's The Childhood of a Leader. This is a movie about a fascist leader at the age of 7. Very fun stuff. There's Vox Lux. These are international editions of this movie. I'd like to encourage the fine folks at one of the beautiful boutique Blu-ray companies to release these movies in America. And there's The World to Come, which stars Casey Affleck, Christopher Abbott, Vanessa Kirby, and Catherine Waterston. We're almost done, guys. How about The Zone of Interest? Not just because it's a World War II movie, not just because it's a movie about the Holocaust, but it's a movie that Corbet has cited many times in talking about The Brutalist, because it's a movie that was authentically successful and widely seen despite its unique storytelling devices and its complicated and difficult subject matter. It is a sign that there is an audience, a hungry audience for an unusual, more art-forward version of cinema. And he's right. The Zone of Interest made tens of millions of dollars at the box office, and it was experiencing essentially the same slow rollout that The Brutalist is, which I know is flummoxing and angering a lot of movie fans who really want to see this movie that has won a Golden Globe and may become a Best Picture winner eventually. But this is pretty common. This strategy of slow rolling a movie like this through award season is extremely common. The Zone of Interest won Academy Awards, and I think The Brutalist is going to do the same. And this slow rollout tends to actually help create awareness and anticipation. And so it will eventually come to you if you're watching at home and infuriated that you can't see this film yet. So let's add The Zone of Interest. I think one of the great films of 2023 for sure. I think it may have landed at number 6 on my list. What an absolute dumbass thing to say, that this is the 6th best film of the year. I should shut up now. Last film on the list. Another film about an architect. Another film by a great American filmmaker. Another film by Francis Ford Coppola. I'm talking about Megalopolis. Movie I wasn't a big fan of, but it is really the B-side to The Brutalist A-side, or maybe vice versa. The Brutalist is a movie about how it is impossible to do anything by yourself. Megalopolis is a movie about how doing things by yourself may be the only way. You could see why a filmmaker would believe in both ideas. Movies are a collaborative medium, but they demand a strong vision from usually a writer-director. Those tend to be the very best films. Not always, but often. In order to mount those movies, you need tens, hundreds, sometimes even thousands of people to help create them, get them into the world, market them, get people to go out and see them, even exhibit them. So Megalopolis is a movie that when it concludes, we're convinced it's Adam Driver's character, who's really the guy who's controlling all of the power of the world. Seems like a little bit of a dangerous message, but nevertheless, Megalopolis, an amazing experiment. I've only seen it one time. I'd like to see it again. I will see it again. Maybe my attitude will warm to it, but it feels like a big part of this story. So that's our list, guys. Let's take a look. Well, we need to rename this. It's not The Brutalist. It's The Brutalist Syllabus. How many films have we added to our list? Let's see. 34. 34? This is free, this video. You've just gotten 34 film recommendations. You can find these films all over the place. Most of them are available to stream. Some are available to stream for free. Any questions? No? Thank you so much. for joining us in yet another Syllabus episode. We'll be doing these again soon. Should we do these for Sonic the Hedgehog 3? Should that be our next episode? Tune in and find out. I'll see you then.